Welcome to the latest episode of The Resistance. I am your voice of the Resistance, Mr. Chad Kirshner, and I'm here with even somebody more important, Mr. Roberto Baldwin. He is the sustainability editor at SAE. Sometimes goes by Robbie.
Yeah, sometimes.
Roberto,
Robbie.
whatever. He like other guests on this podcast live in the San Francisco Bay Area. So, woo! I don't know. We had on a different episode. I had Alex Otto's Auto Buyer's Guide, and he lives in the Santa Cruz-ish area.
Yeah, he lives in the woods somewhere.
Lives in the woods. Yes, off grid.
Yeah, he's ready for the end of the world. God bless him.
Yes, God bless him. God bless us, everyone.
God bless us, everyone.
So, the purpose of the show, part of like I kind of had this brainwave of like, well, one, Resistance is a cool name because it's kind of like, oh, underground fighting the good fight, but it's also like electricity, and it's represented by the capital letter Omega. Like there's so it's synergy. In business, we call this corporate synergy.
Cool.
And I actually don't know if we call it that or not, but one of the things I want to be able to do with this is feature people who are either directly going after misinformation. It's not the main goal of this, but one of the things is to address misinformation by either, countering very specific narratives or talk to people who are working on ways of countering it in other ways, such as education, such as, developing new products. I want to tell the truth, not to steal a Colbert from Rapport days, but like the truthiness. Like, what is the truthiness around EVs, alternate transportation, this sort of mobility space? Like, yes, we're going to focus pretty car heavy, probably car and truck kind of heavy, but it's not the only solution. And basically, I want to highlight what people are doing so that when you walk away after listening to this or watching this on YouTube, you feel like, oh, I learned something.
You're 4% smarter. At least,
and it wasn't
guarantee 4%. The Resistance has a guarantee of 4% smarter when you walk away.
4%
about a single topic
guarantee,
not just overall, just a single topic.
Just a single topic, which we're going to talk about. I don't know. I think the only way to really educate people would be to talk about your favorite burritos, but we aren't going to do that. What do you do? So you do other things, but you work at SAE. You're the sustainability editor there. Explain to, I guess, me as well, because I don't know if I completely understand, like, what is it you do there, and like what is sort of the objective in what is a sustainability editor at SAE? What does that look like, and what are you tasked with sort of daily to do?
Cool. All right. So SAE is it was a originally known as Society of Automotive Engineers, 1906, I believe. Bunch of old dudes, Henry Ford and some others. They got together. They said, "Hey, let's all get together so we can make whatever we're making. Let's have standards." The idea is like, when you buy motor oil, it's an SAE standard 1030 weight. When you and it's more than just automotive. That's why we're just SAE. We're not Society of Automotive Engineers, because there are more aviation standards than automotive standards that we work on, and there are medical standards, so X-ray machines and all these things that are in your life that potential to harm you. We help work with I hate this word, stakeholders, but we work with stakeholders, companies, scientists, researchers. We get them all together, we shove them in a room, and then we shake them until they come up with a standard for something. So the autonomous driving standard, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, that's an SAE standard. The plug for your car, the CCS is an SAE standard. The NACS, or the Tesla plug that that's now an SAE standard. It doesn't belong to Tesla anymore. It's ours. But it's really ours. It belongs to us. But no, that's the reality is it's the it belongs to everyone who's working within North America, essentially, right now. So
standards are important.
And standards are important. Standards keep you alive. Standards keep cars from doing things they shouldn't. They keep planes in the air. They keep X-ray machines from giving you too much radiation and turning you into a Hulk, which doesn't happen as nearly as often as you would think. My wife is a rad tech, and I'm asking her all the time, have you hulked anyone? She's like, would you stop asking me that? So it's what happens,
dang it.
Unfortunately. So SAE also, in addition to doing standards, we're also about education. We're also about, working with kids, working with university students, white papers. We sort of, as an organization, we sort of cover the whole gamut of a lot of things that's going on. My job when I came on is that we have a career board. And so people who are looking for jobs within sustainability, you go to the career board. And initially they were like, hey, we just want you to write an article a week for this career board. And most career boards are like, how to write a resume, but that's not who I am.
Right.
So I decided just to write about what's going on in the industry. So I write about sustainability, mostly focused on automotive now, but we'll start working more on aerospace, on the grid. So I write about sustainability as a whole with a focus currently on EVs. And I have a podcast that I do for SAE. So I do a podcast every 2 weeks. I have like a little podcast that's about 15 to 20 minutes. And I talk to people in the industry who are doing something. And, it's essentially sharing with the world what is going on within the industry. And currently I'm working on a video series. And the initial set of videos is about education. It's education about EVs. It's education about PHEVs. It's a lot of the things that I think a lot of people don't quite know. I know it. Chad knows it. If you're listening to this podcast, likely you know it. You understand because you go to EV Pulse, so you have a very high base level of information rattling around in your brain.
That's very flattering for you to say. But as you were rebooting earlier during some pre-show difficulties we had, I was telling the paid subscribers that our most popular video series on the EV Pulse YouTube channel is the education stuff. So there really is a thirst and desire to understand this stuff better. So, yes, if you're smart enough to be listening to this podcast that I'm hosting with you, Robbie, yes, of course they already know everything. But there's I think a lot of stuff to learn.
There is. And I think there's for me, I think there's a way of because we already got the people who are super eco-conscious, who are like, I need an EV because I care about the planet. And you have the first adopters. Right. I got an EV because it's the coolest thing. It's the rest. Everyone else is who I'm trying to talk to. And so, I think I want to be able to tell people about EVs and about sustainability in a way where they don't feel like they're being talked down to. I try not to use a lot of jargon, right, which is, really important, because if I just keep saying J3400 all day, people don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah. They're like, what is this man doing? So you don't use a lot of jargon. Don't talk down to people. I feel like there's been a lot of scolding, especially when it comes around sustainability, because the idea is like, well, if you're driving a big truck, you're a horrible person. I'm like, hold on. Sure. You don't know what this person's life is. I don't know what they're doing.
Right. Well, I mean,
there are plenty of reasons why someone needs to drive a big truck. Like a lot of people who drive big trucks in my neighborhood, literally that's their job. They're landscapers, they're contractors. Sure. Like that is their job, is to drive a big truck. And so, trying to demystify some of the things around EVs. Like, and I know this is the most insane thing, but I put up a video last week, how EVs survive the cold. It's July.
Yep.
But I put that up now because I wanted to sort of get a little bit of traction, to sort of get that little SEO sweep. So in October and November, when I, share it again, right, when people actually are concerned about EVs, whether they own an EV or whether they are thinking about buying an EV, they know that it's not as bad as the local news makes it out to be. And that's sort of the hardest thing I have to tackle is the local news. Because the local news is just like, hey, a thing happened. Let's go out. Let's send someone out. There's no context. Right. The person usually who's covering doesn't really understand the topic thoroughly, unfortunately, right, because that person has to do, 17 of these hits a week. Yeah. And there's no way they're going to know about 17 different topics. So they're just like, on the street, this gentleman couldn't charge his Tesla because, first of all, they didn't precondition the Tesla.
Right.
The one charging station out of like 20 in that area is not working. So of course that's a huge deal. So if all EVs are bad, that's what I think.
Right.
That's what most of us are sort of coming up against. And so my job is
Well,
to sort of give people the knowledge to at least be well informed about EVs and sustainability.
well, and the people watching local news probably, I mean, I don't have any demographic data to support this. I'm talking mostly out of my rear end here, but like probably a little bit older of an audience. Because younger people tend to find their news elsewhere. I mean, I can't remember the last time I watched a local newscast. I've been interviewed. I've talked to those segment reporters that have to travel across half the state to get, because they have to stand up in front of this courthouse instead of in front of a green screen because reasons.
Yeah.
And it's one person. They're the producer as well. They've got the camera and everything else. Like this isn't a whole team. And they only have so much time, and they didn't go to school to understand electric vehicle technology. They went to school for broadcasting or journalism or something that isn't necessarily directly related to that sort of segment. So you really think it's local news that's really hitting it?
I think local news gets it a bit wrong. I think some of the larger publications out there, the bigger, the New York Times has gotten it wrong. Washington Post has gotten it wrong because they don't they might have a sustainability reporter on that beat, but that person is, maybe they're working on something else and now there's breaking news, so they pull somebody in from somewhere else, they throw them on there, they write it, the editor's like, yeah, everything looks good, they put it out there, and then as a person who covers this deeply, you're just like, why did you write that? Why did you write that? Why did you write that? You're like this. You're creating more confusion by writing this article. But as someone who's worked in the media, and you're and Chad, we know that newsrooms are getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So you're asking people to cover like 5 or 6 beats, and when you do that, you're never going to get like a really deep coverage that you need on certain things.
No.
And so, when I was an InfoSec reporter, like writing about hackers and security researchers, it was the same thing, because, you're just throwing somebody at hacking and they're just like saying things because they're like, okay, I think this is this. And then they say it. And then I'm watching it on TV and I'm like, oh no.
You're like, oh no. But I mean, so you've worked other places, obviously, than SAE. You've been a technology reporter for a while. So people probably have seen your byline in some pretty big publications. It's interesting though that like we do know that newsrooms are getting smaller, and this idea of generalized news, like we all have the same problem: is we need traffic, we need eyeballs, because we need to be able to sell ads or subscriptions or something, because we all want to get paid. And despite what a lot of people that come to my YouTube channel think, we're not making money. Like this isn't like
there are very few journalists. The journalists that make money are like the 1% in the world. Like it's like the people who are on like cable news, like the big time. Those people are making money. And I worked in entertainment before journalism, and at the top line, that's where the money is. Everyone else below it, we're all just scraping by. It's not a glamorous life. Before me and my wife got married, I told her I was going to be a writer and I'm not going to make a lot of money, and she said okay. So and it's worked out just like that.
Like, oh, okay. There you go. But I mean, and the thing is, like, I'm not saying you in this case, but I mean, there are some people out there that are doing this because they have spouses, they have partners that can support both. So it's or trust fund kids, or things like that. I think there's a lot more of that going around there than I think we admit. But that is, when you do generalized news, even if it's generalized automotive news, like, you have to find a way to draw traffic. So if it bleeds, it leads. Like, that's the old adage. So if you can get something that involves Elon and Tesla, and you combine that with something scary like a battery fire or a car not working, like, I see why those stories happen. I see why they're popular. And I don't know if it's our job here to solve this particular problem, but generalized news tends to, it's like the USA Today problem, except I think it's trickled down more.
Mm-hmm.
Like you never went to USA Today to read in-depth stories. That's
Yeah.
what you went to the Times, the Post, or the whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now all of those have become very generalized. So then maybe if you wanted to see automotive coverage, you'd go specifically to an automotive publication, an automotive news, maybe something like The Drive or Jalopnik or whatever. Well, now those are all very generalized.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to keep niching down to find the valuable audience, which is why I talk about EVs.
Yeah.
Like that was coming up with the strategy of developing this publication was we need to niche down fairly far, but still have a decent total addressable market and hopefully find a way to make all that make money. But how do we fix that problem, that local news problem? Because the answer can't just be they need more money, because like that's not going to work. So because
Well,
it's
I
not going to
mean,
happen.
well, I mean, the
Realistically,
reality
is
is
there a
they
way to
need more
solve that
money,
problem?
but I mean, yeah, they do need more money, but realistically, it's
Fair.
I mean, if you're a journalist in a region and you're a niche journalist, like you really cover, like your jam is EVs, or your jam is infosec, or your jam is social
Mhm.
media. If you see that your local news is sort of not doing, reach out to them, be like, hey, I'm a specialist. I you know I am narrowed down into this area. Maybe, try to get on, reach out to them, talk to them. They'll they're always looking for people to talk to. That's the thing. That's why they're always man on the street. The man on the
Yeah.
street is a big deal for like that. But if they can man on
Right.
the street and talk to you like, hey, we have our resident EV expert, Chad. Chad, tell us about the, what's going on this
Right.
week with Tesla or with Hyundai or with Ford or etc. And even just going in and talking to them, that helps them. I mean, every conversation I have with people in the industry that maybe I didn't have before helps me do my
Hmm.
job. And if you ever think,
Yeah.
if you're a journalist and you ever think, oh, I know everything, you might as well just quit, because you don't. Because there's always something. Everything's moving so incredibly quickly, and this is every beat
Right.
that you're constantly learning. And so, giving those folks the ability to learn from someone who covers it constantly and has a deep understanding helps them, it helps you. And it's, you're trying, we're all trying our best really to me, I'm just trying my best to share fact-based information with people. That is literally my
Right.
job, is like, I find facts, I tell people what's going on, and I do it in a way that if there's, there are bad things about EVs, the mineral sourcing is not great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have an article, we have a podcast, talk to Tim Stevens, who did a really great article for Motor Trend about this. And
Mhm.
we're just trying to get everyone on board, because even with the bad things, if you highlight it, that means that you hope that means the companies will do better. And for the good things, when you
Right.
highlight it, that means the company will like continue to do the good thing. And along the
Right.
way, you hope that people who watch or who listen or who read will sort of start taking that in and be like, oh, maybe I should try this. And they
Hmm.
go out and maybe they
Well,
rent an EV or whatever, and then they're
yeah.
like, oh, well, this is awesome, and they buy an EV, they put a charger at their house, and they're like, I'm never going to the gas station again, and they have to buy their
Right.
their beef
Right.
jerky online or something.
Yeah. Well, and that's like the optimal scenario. There is some real lack of, at least with the new media. I hate to use new media because YouTube's been around forever now. It feels like 2006 or something,
Yeah.
2007, whatever. But like, the lack of new media literacy amongst people is very low, and specifically within like what we do
Hmm.
is we'll get criticized in the comments for people saying you were too nitpicky. Why didn't you're not supposed to be critical of, like, I've had people literally say you're not supposed to be critical of these things. Reviews are supposed to be unbiased. Well, no,
That's the whole point of a review.
reviews are that's the whole point of a review.
If
I drive 150 cars a year. Over Craig Cole's lifetime, he's probably driven 4,000 cars. So, like, you're coming to us for our, in some ways, I don't say our, in some ways our bias, but like that
insight.
experience. Now, yeah, that insight. Now I understand that maybe I don't understand what it's like to be a parent, because I don't. But like, I do try to put myself in their in the shoes. Yes, it's a little bit more difficult because I don't deal with that daily. But like, if you are just watching something and you just want somebody to point and tell you what this is, or point and show you this feature, that's an overview. At best, that's an overview.
Yeah.
That's not a review. Now, I know the term review gets more search traffic because people are actually looking for reviews, and then they start seeing all of these like like the lyric. We just had a lyric review go up recently,
Mhm.
and the air conditioner didn't work right in the car, and the number of people who came back and said it's Craig's fault. Like, he has no idea what he's talking about. Well, it's 90 degrees outside. He's sitting in the car and he's sweating. I don't think there's like how do you, and the air conditioner's on max. Like, that's not a that at that point that's not a user problem. That's a car problem. And the number of people like who came in who were owners saying, "Well, mine works fine." You don't know what you're talking about. Well, maybe yours does work fine. We said in this video, look, this may be a one-off, but like, this is our experience.
Mhm.
And people were upset that we were sharing our experience with that car. But you'll then see criticism of like auto reviewers saying that, well, they're never critical and all they're worried about is access, and they won't tell a manufacturer when something's wrong is wrong. And the thing is, we could go into a lot of details about how money flows through this business, but I'm not paid for new car reviews. My travel is comped when I go to a first drive program, but I'm not paid to or told what to say.
Mhm.
Yeah, if I bash something, just bash it, I think an automaker has a right to be upset about that. But if I complain about something or I'm critical of something that's legit, that's based in fact, like, oh, the seat I don't find comfortable. Oh, I don't think there's enough rear leg room. Oh, I think the lack of a volume control is an ergonomic issue. Oh, I think not having Apple CarPlay is doing a disservice to customers. Like, that's objective criticism. And automakers, 9 times out of 10, they may not like it, but they're not going to sit here and say, oh, they're like, okay, thanks, because they need that feedback. A lot of times we're getting into these vehicles just before they get shipped to the public.
Yeah.
So sometimes there are problems and that aren't found through normal development that we that we sometimes idiot journalists stumble across because we're weird. And the automaker's like, oh, and
Especially when
then
you
that
go to,
leads
yeah.
to changes.
I think for me, an automotive purchase is for most people is either the number 2 purchase they will make, like cost wise, or number 1.
Yep.
If they buy a house, it's the second most expensive thing they are going to buy. If they're not going to buy a house because of the way our
Yes.
economy is set up, it's the most expensive thing they're going to
Yes.
buy. And you have
Yep.
to, I take that very seriously. And I know a lot of automotive journalists take that seriously because
Yes.
what
Same.
we say to people, it is not, I'm not picking on it. Let's talk about Tesla really quickly. Elon Musk doesn't like me. He's
Yeah.
had people
Okay.
call and yell at me, but Tesla has given me cars over the years. And when I review a Tesla, I review it as it is. I don't care whether or not he likes me or not. I don't care about whether or not he's you
Right.
know, and full on insane person. That has no bearing on the car itself. People can make that decision,
Correct.
that personal decision, whether or not they like Elon. They can make that decision themselves. But the
Right.
car itself is just an item that I am going to review, and I'm going to give you
Yep.
my personal, honest, and fair review. One of the most important things to me is that I want to be fair as possible. I want to be fair to the people who
Yes.
are thinking about buying this vehicle, and I want to be fair to the automaker. And if I say, hey,
Yep.
this isn't working correctly, or I don't like this, or whatever, I will tell the automaker. And I've had, and it was the same thing when I was covering tech, is that there were things that I just didn't, this isn't good. And I would get on phone
Yeah.
calls with these people, and sometimes they would yell at me. And I had Tesla yell at me for a
Sure.
review of the Model 3. And I'm like, they would, and I'm like, I can't do a review of a vehicle from the future, which was sort of Tesla's thing. These are going to be autonomous cars, was
Yep.
sort of the push they were getting.
Right. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
can't review a car that isn't available, and that car is not available. The car I can review is the
Yep.
car I'm in right now. And I have to review that car based on the people and the market that it is in. So, I don't, overall, I don't like big SUVs as personally, but I will review every big SUV as someone who wants to buy a big SUV. It is not, it's not about me. It's about the people and the market.
And that is our job.
Yes.
Like, that is our job. But one thing that you do notice, especially in the world of like the internet, is sometimes people research the cars after they buy them and they're looking for validation of their purchase. And I think that's sometimes
they're looking for validation before the purchase.
Car.
They're everyone who's ever bought a Jeep Wrangler, and I have told people for years up until this current Jeep Wrangler, don't buy a Jeep Wrangler. Even though me personally, I would totally buy a Jeep Wrangler. But I tell people all the time, I'm like, don't buy a Jeep Wrangler unless you are an enthusiast and you want to rip it apart and make it a rock crawler, or you want to do all these things. But just as a car, don't buy it. Up until the current generation. But if for me personally, I would totally buy an old Jeep Wrangler.
Oh, well, I mean, like, so the JL, I remember going on the first drive of the JL, not the long lead, but one of the longer leads. And some people asked me about it. They're like, hey, they changed these things. What's it like? Is it still a Jeep? And I said, here's what you need to know about the JL Wrangler. It is the best driving, most well-equipped, most luxurious, most, best driving Jeep Wrangler that Jeep has ever made, that has rolled off that Toledo North Assembly Complex since 1941. It still drives like poop.
It's still it is still a Jeep, but all the things around it that make you angry, like if you ever rented a Jeep and got the soft top, you were an angry person when you try to put that top back on. All that has been solved.
Yes.
It still drives like a Jeep because that's what a Jeep. You're just bouncing around everywhere you go.
Right.
I'm doing visual gags on an audio podcast.
If it didn't.
Yeah. They would complain.
Oh, sorry, there's a video element to it.
There we go. But yeah, so when you but the people who are saying I want to buy a Jeep Wrangler, and I could tell them all day, you probably don't really need a Jeep Wrangler. What do you do? And they just want validation from me.
Right.
They just want me to say, yes, you should get a Jeep Wrangler, as opposed to me saying, have you thought about the RAV4?
Right.
Based on your lifestyle, maybe just get the RAV4. Yeah. They're going to go buy the Jeep Wrangler.
So if somebody comes to me and says, hey, Chad, I'm looking for a mid-size crossover, what should I look at? Okay, I'll give you some ideas. If you come to me and say, hey, I'm looking at the RAV4, what do you think? I'm like, buy it. There's because if they've already kind of, like, if they're asking you about a very specific vehicle, 9 times out of 10, that's the vehicle they've already lined up. They've eyed it up. They just want to know if there's any real reason to not buy it. Best case scenario, they're just looking to make sure that it won't break down on them, whatever. Oh, sure, a RAV, a CRV, whatever. Fine. Nothing wrong with it. There's really aren't that many bad cars out there. Yes, we can nitpick and say that there's some worse than others and things like that, but like, unless you're buying like a Mazda MX-30, which I don't care for at all, I don't think they sell them anymore. Like, there just aren't any really
manufacturing has gotten so good over the last 20 years that most cars, the Chevy Malibu is a great sort of example. It's not a great sedan when you line it up against the Camry and the Accord. Like, next to those two vehicles, it's just it's not great. It's not a good car.
Yeah.
But if you really, really want a Chevy Malibu, you're going to be fine driving a Chevy Malibu. It's not going to break down.
Yep.
It's not going to be as nice as those vehicles because those are just the best in that market. But if that's what you really want, you're not going to drive off the lot and then have the vehicle explode. So yeah, we're just trying to give you the best information.
Well, that's so. Before we cut to a potential commercial break, context. Like, what we bring to this is why you should come to us. Maybe not me specifically, but why you should go look at reviews and stuff before making a car purchase. Because as you said, it's expensive. And to quote the great Jason Isaacs as Mirror Captain Gabriel Lorca in Star Trek Discovery, universal laws for lackeys. Like, this idea that, like, just go out and trust anybody. Everybody knows about cars. There's no whatever. Like, he's like, context is for kings. And that is, in the automotive space, that is what our job is. Our job is should be able to provide this context to be able to say, like, look, no, I've driven several thousand cars over my lifetime. I've driven nearly every new EV on the market. I haven't driven the Spectre yet, but I've driven like nearly every new EV on the market. Like, Craig's driven more. Like, there is a reason why you should listen to what we're saying. And I don't mean to be that egotistical about it. I don't need to, whatever. That's not the goal. You go to, expertise is important.
Yes.
And I feel like, and not to delve into political conversation, but expertise seems to not be as valued as much as sort of the world has changed.
It's very much a cult of personality and like micro cults of personality when it out there. I see a lot of influencers who, when I watch, someone will send me the video of the influencer, and influencers work really hard to do what they do, but I will just,
absolutely.
But like
absolutely.
within like 2 or 3 minutes, some of them will just have all these errors about the car. And I'm just like, what, why? I'm like, you work so hard because I know they have a video person, they have an editor person, they have a makeup person, they have, and they have to stand there and they're spending hours trying to get the perfect shot. And then they just kind of biff it, because they didn't do sort of due diligence to have like the correct information. There was one recently like, oh, this car has a Tesla, is built around a Tesla, so it's full self-driving. I'm like, no, it's not. Why do you say that? You did it's this beautifully shot video, and then it's bomb.
I hate, though, like, I don't mind. I mean, I don't like when people get information wrong. And I feel like there are some influencers out there that came from tech who don't have the automotive context, but because they bring big audiences with them from tech, they're sort of like this, I already know what we're talking about, so it's fine to talk about it. You're exactly
me specifically. I was as a kid when I took over, when I started doing automotive at Engadget, the reason I did it is because we were covering Tesla. Every time Tesla did something, all the tech sites would write about it. I'm like, well, other people or other automakers are doing essentially the same thing. They just don't have the bravado of Elon Musk coming out and doing a little tap dance and then saying something. And so my editor at the time just replied, okay. But I grew up working on cars. I grew up being I was a car guy way before I was a nerd. I didn't get my first computer until I was 21, but I was driving when I was 14, which totally illegal. Don't do that, by the way.
Well, maybe in some states it might be okay. I don't know anymore.
So I grew up driving a bunch of different types of cars. I drove tractors. I worked on a farm. This blah, all this car knowledge is still in there.
Yeah. Well, Craig restored a 36 Ford with his dad. It's a really incredible car too. Like, you should seek out Craig Cole's personal YouTube channel, because there's some cool stuff on there about this car. But like people say, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about, he's just a nerd. Like, no, he's an engineer who happens to not be currently engineering. Like, that's and what I find frustrating, what I genuinely do find frustrating, is there's a couple of content creators out there, I won't name drop them here, but like that, like, will cover news and stuff like on TikTok or whatever, and have these massive followings, but get the automotive news wrong. They go grab a rumor, they never try to get comment, they never try to collaborate stories. So like, they're out there just spewing straight up misinformation to large groups of people, because they've got these bite-sized, non-fact-checked just things they're throwing out into the universe. And that is where context matters. And I think it's hard to get context in a 60-second short. I do. I think there's ways to do it, but it's important that like, that's what bothers me. People spreading misinformation. Which is part of what this podcast is for. We're going to put a slight pin in it. We're going to potentially run an ad here. If you see an ad, hey, we've got ads. If you don't see an ad, well then, hey, that's great. So, all right, hey, we're back. Look at that. I'm here with Roberto, Robbie.
My little Honda Moto Compacto from Japan that I haven't even taken out of the...
Oh, look at that. I ordered in the Moto Compacto, and it didn't come for like ever, so then I just canceled my order.
Oh,
because I didn't want to pay dealer markup. But
there we go. Now it's out of the bag. Look at that, just for you. I took my little
that
out of the bag.
That's such a cool.
Direct from
It's so cool.
Japan. I don't remember if I got it. I think I got it at the.
It's so cool.
At the Japan museum.
I wish you could plug it in the back of a Prologue. I wish it had a docking port like in the back of the Prologue,
right?
Like the Moto Compo did with like the Honda City.
I think that you probably will get something like that when Honda starts making their own EVs versus backing on top of
Ultium.
Yeah.
Ultium.
It's a pretty cool name, to be honest. Good job with your naming.
Ultium or Moto Compacto?
Both of those. Ultium's pretty rad. Ultium's like it's like a Marvel.
Yeah, it's also
villain.
Heavy and big.
The Prologue?
So it's the
Ultium.
Ultium.
It's a pretty big.
Yeah, we don't want to rehash that because there's a whole other episode of this very podcast where I talk with Alex a little bit about Ultium and efficiency, so we won't go there. But countering misinformation and making sure that people have accurate information, especially in what some would say a late stage capitalistic environment, is pretty important. That's why standards are important. That's why things like SAE here is important.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about J3400 and how eventually that's going to be built into every car, every new EV. Yeah, there's some weird reasons why maybe the rollout's been a little bit slower, but like that's the sort of end sort of goal. When you're talking to friends, family, people that find out you work at SAE, people that find out maybe you talk a lot about EVs and this alternate shit, when they ask you what is sustainability, like what do you think the general public are most concerned with right now regarding, let's say, EV adoption? Like, what do you think the biggest
charge anxiety?
Like legit, not. We'll talk about fake news in a second, but it's charge anxiety.
I think charging is the biggest concern because there isn't. They don't quite understand that you can just charge if you have a home, which I believe like 80% of U.S. people actually live in a house. Which is crazy. I thought it was like 65, the other 65. But, still, that's a lot. I didn't realize that. I've lived in apartments almost my entire life. But, until we
sure.
Yeah. But 65% of people could potentially just charge it at home. But people don't really think about that because it's so foreign to how we drive cars now. And it was always like you would get in your car and then once a week or twice a week or however, you would go to the gas station on your way to something or, I have to go, it was a thing you had to do. Getting gas is that's a thing you're doing. Whereas charging your vehicle is something that happens while you're doing something else. Especially when you're at home. Like we just charge our cars at night and we have a 3-year lease on a Kona EV and we had 250 free kilowatts from Electrify America. We have like 1 month left on that car. I've been going to Electrify America trying to get those free. I'm like, we got to use up our 250. And we've, and before I was doing that, we probably took the car to a charging station 4 times. Once when we first got it, once to show my wife how to do it, once when she went on a road trip, another time when I went on a road trip. And then the rest of the time we just, we plugged it in. We set it to 90% because it's slow charging. We're like, it's going to be fine.
Sure.
And we just do our day. And, we plug in every night or maybe every other night or maybe every third night. But you just pull into the driveway, plug it in, walk in the house. And you don't even think about my wife didn't realize that gas had gone up to like $7 a gallon because she didn't have to go. But it also meant that my wife didn't have to go get gas in the middle of the night. She works late at the hospital. She gets off work very late. And there are times when she had to go get gas in very sketchy neighborhoods because she's like, oh, I didn't get gas on the way to work. I didn't think about it. I spaced it. And now I need to get gas. And so that doesn't happen anymore. On the flip side of that is, of course, a lot of the early charging stations are in like really scary, dark corners of parking lots. And I think the EV station companies are realizing that we're not cool with that. But the average person they still think they have to go somewhere every time they charge their vehicle. And when they hear stories about Electrify America or EVgo failing people, or they see stories of people in long lines, or if they're even driving somewhere and they pull up next to Electrify America's location and they see 10 cars lined up for it, that doesn't sell EVs. And I think
No, no.
and so I think for a lot of people, that is the big thing that they're concerned about, because why buy a vehicle if I can't fuel it up as easily as I can a gas vehicle?
Right. Right. And then and that is, I think, in some ways a legit concern. If you can't charge at home or at work and you have to rely on a DC fast charger as a gas pump, well, that's not really how EVs, at least right now, are engineered. That's not how it's supposed to work. You have to really kind of, it's not hard to to reconfigure your brain for this to work. Like it doesn't, it's easy,
Mhm.
but it's still a mental hurdle
It's
if
about
you've never had
it's about a
to.
month in, because my wife was very concerned about range when we got it's
Mhm.
256 miles of range, but she was like, "What about plugging it in? What about?" She had a lot of concerns, because even
Sure.
though I bring cars home all the time, she has her own life and her own job. She's not a big car person. She
Mhm.
she just loves fast cars that have manual transmissions and are rear wheel drive. That's it. That's all she cares about. Until we got the dogs, now it's just like, is there room for the dogs? Those are the old those are
Right. It's everyone for the
yeah. But she was concerned about range. Am I going to have enough range? Is it going to charge enough? It was,
Mhm.
and 3 years in, about 2 months ago, we're driving by Fiat 500e, the first generation, and it was for sale for like $5,000. And my wife, I'm
Yep.
just like, why don't we just get one of those? Why don't we just trade in this lease and just go get that? I'm like, well, it only has 86 miles of range, and she's like, when do I ever drive 86 miles in a day? So there's such a like a
Right.
180-degree
Yeah.
way of swapping her thinking, because for her life, she never goes to a charging station. We just plug it in at home.
Right.
She doesn't go on long road
Yeah.
trips except for maybe once or twice a year. And so yeah, she has sort of like zero. She is that person who has gone from being really concerned about what happens when you're in it having an EV to,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's just the thing. And I get up every morning and my car is full of
Well,
gas.
a lot of people hear the stats of how often people drive, but nobody believes it. Like when Ford launched the first version of the E-Transit, they were adamant. They're like, "Look, we've had telematics data in our commercial vehicles for 5 years. We've been collecting it as an aggregate. We know how many miles y'all are driving. Like for a certain segment of our users, a large segment of our users, not all of them, but a large segment of our users, this E-Transit with this range is fine." But like nobody believes that until you actually like see how much you really drive. You don't drive that much. Some people do.
There
Absolutely,
are
some people
edge
do.
cases.
But
The Department of Transportation
yep,
put a number out, like how off the average miles an American drives per day, and it's 36 miles.
yeah,
36. I learned that while I was doing a PHEV video while driving a Ford PHEV that also had 36 miles of range, so it really fit really well in the
right.
narrative. But like
You're like
the
boom.
thing is that people are in their cars for so long because we're stuck in traffic. So you
Yep.
assume that you're driving 50, 60 miles. The reality is you're not. A lot of
Hmm.
people aren't really driving that far. Maybe you're driving 20 miles to work, but if you're in there for an hour and a half, it
Right.
feels like you're driving 200 miles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so for me, my trip to the airport is an entire state away, which it's not really that far, but it's in a different state. It's it's 100 miles. It's almost exactly 100 miles door to gate.
Mhm.
I do it in 80 minutes, 75, 80 minutes, like because I can go fast
Yeah, yeah.
because it's highways because there's no traffic, you know. But but like if I were in Los Angeles going 100 miles, that could take me
That's like 3 days. 3
5 hours.
days of travel.
Yeah, like
Having
that
lived in
is
Los Angeles
yeah.
multiple times and being down there twice in the past month, it's a good 3-day trek. Like you kiss your family goodbye, you write letters. You write a letter that like open in case I die, so if you don't ever make it back, they can open it up and
Right.
find out who you've left your pot of gold to. Yeah,
Yep,
LA's
exactly.
it's a lot.
Woo. But yeah, people just don't drive that much. They maybe are in a car a lot, as you said, but they don't drive that much. And honestly, if you're gonna sit in traffic all day for hours, what's it matter if you're in some rando 1.6 liter turbo 4 cylinder or An EV.
A Chevy Bolt.
Does it matter?
Really, just all you really should care about
Yeah, Chevy Bolt.
does your air conditioning, your heater work, and is the seat comfortable for you? It's not that it's comfortable; it has to be
Yes.
comfortable for you. It's very important when you are looking
Yes.
for a car. Go and sit in that car, and like really shove your butt in there in your back, and really move around and figure out if that's comfortable for you.
Right.
Because you might buy your dream car, but it turns out like 2 months in, you're just not comfortable.
Yep.
You're just going to hate that car, and it's going to be unfortunate.
Yep. Yeah, I tend to not be able to get super comfortable in power seats that have like 22-way of adjustment.
Yeah.
Like for some reason,
It's
the
too
more
much.
adjustment the seat has, I can never find it. I don't know if it's because I can feel all the motors in the seat. Like I don't know what it is, but like I just can't. Like when Lincoln did like this perfect position, what 37-way seat or whatever, I told somebody at Ford, I was like, I can't get comfortable on this. Like, how can you not get comfortable on this? I said, it's too much choice. Like it's
You've made
just
it's too
too
complex.
much choice. It's too
I
complex.
had
We
to
don't need
pull
to
back the lumbar support in all cars
give me
because the
lumbar.
lumbar on the way my body is configured, like it's not hitting like my lumbar area. It's like hitting
Mhm.
like my tailbone. So it's like I'm always being shoved forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I need lumbar that's adjustable, like not just both in and out, but also up and down.
Yeah, I have to
Like I
push it
feel like
all the
that's
way up and then
important.
a little bit out, and even then it's still sometimes not. Yeah. That's again, it's
Yeah.
everyone's body is different. So get the seat that is comfortable for you.
Right. And like if seat heating is like if a seat heater is really important to you, try it. Like make sure that it's your back and your butt getting heated because like some heated seats only do your butt. And maybe you don't want that. Maybe you want your back,
Now you just
you
got
know.
swamp butt.
Because the automaker's gonna save money. And then or you set up a swamp butt. Some cars have multiple stages of heated steering wheels, like between hot and really hot, or really, really hot. Though heated seat air conditioner, yeah, that's a good combo.
I have the heated seat on and the air conditioning blowing.
Yeah, that's like a hot tub in the winter. Like it's yeah.
I would drive my I had a Del Sol for a little while, and I would have the air conditioning. I lived in LA at the time, so I have the air conditioning blowing on me with the top down, like constantly. Just
Oh yes,
yeah,
yes. I had an S2000 that had specifically a top-down heater mode, like a vent setting that had some extra vents right in front of the thing. You turn that heater on high with that mode. Your hands were nice and warm. Rest of you was freezing cold. But your hands were nice and warm.
those are important.
It was great. It was great.
Decadence.
See, there should be standards for things like that. Can you work on that? Like
There
an SAE
probably
standard for
are.
heated seats.
There probably are, but it's probably the switch or the amount of heat that's putting out or how it's built. It gets the SAE standards get super deep into things like the seal around a battery pack, like how that's tested, like that's an SAE standard. Like towing is an SAE standard.
Okay.
It runs the gamut, and it really helps.
J2807.
Yeah, it really helps like the automakers be able to say, okay, we are using the standard everyone else is using, and because of that, you can test it against absolutely everything else in the industry, which is helpful for journalists because you can say, oh, okay, well, there's a standard, and I can note this standard, even if you don't say what the standard is, you know that at least
you can at least know.
Everyone's playing on the same playing field.
Yeah, now that everybody does J2807, I can feel comfortable talking about towing. But there was a period of time in the early 2010s where I wasn't comfortable talking about towing because one automaker was quoting one thing, Toyota did SAE, like they were one of the first on that, but like until everybody was J2807 compliant, like you don't know. And I don't know if all automakers are doing it now, but just up until somewhat recently, people weren't using the SAE measurements for methodology for interior volume measurements. So like you couldn't compare like, oh, well, I have this much cargo space. Well, is it based on the SAE method or is it based on the automaker's own decision? And like, because some of it's like, is it from the top of the seat to the bottom of the seat? What if the seats recline? Like, there's a lot. And we want to be able to, if we're providing you information, not you, Robbie, but you as the listener or the viewer, if we're trying to provide you information, we want to be able to do as apples to apples as possible.
Yeah.
And, I don't think marketing likes that all that much, but like I do. So
Well, I mean, marketing is if you're a marketer, you can say, okay, compared to every other vehicle, if your car's the best, you can say we are genuinely we have genuinely the best cargo space behind the third row or whatever, because we're
right.
all using the same SAE standards
But
to
typically we'll be the
measure,
best in the
cargo
segment.
area.
Yeah. But then they'll say segment, and then they'll define their own segment based on four-wheel drive crossovers made of 20% aluminum running on, E85 with Michelin tires. Like that segment's the segment of one. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're best in class in that. But that's a different story. Robbie, where can people find you? Where can they find SAE, and where can they find you?
So SAE, it's real easy. You just go to SAE.org. We're a nonprofit. We actually I don't know how that works, really, to be honest. For my work, you can go to sustainablecareers.sae.org and just kind of scroll down and click on all my articles there, video, podcast. I also write freelance for Ars Technica and a couple other places. I also write stuff for SAE Media. They have a bunch of magazines. And then there's an SAE membership magazine that I write for. I'm sort of all over the place, and I've always sort of been that way, to be honest. I mean,
Sure,
I've worked in a lot of different places, covering a lot of different things. I think the longest beat I've ever had is automotive, just because it was something that I was always very interested in, was part of my youth.
right.
And the transition to electrification is just it's really exciting when you think about it. Like, we are taking something that has been around for over 100 years, and we're changing it. And we're changing it not just because for the funsies of it. We're changing it because we kind of need to, because people in Florida are going to lose their homes, and people in Northern California are going to lose their homes, and they get the climate change is a real thing.
It is, despite what people on the internet will tell you.
Yeah, well, the internet's the internet. That's
climate.
My favorite.
But
my favorite thing about the internet is that in the early 90s, if one of my friends came up to me and said, the earth is flat, we would all make fun of that person. We would all just have, we would tell them, like, how could the earth be flat? You're saying that every airline pilot, every airline, every air traffic controller, every scientist, every weather person, everyone who works at NASA, and he's like, millions upon millions and millions of people are all in on this lie. Millions. You're talking about millions of people are all in on this lie that the earth is flat. And then they'd be like, oh, I guess you got a point. Now, if someone comes up to my group of friends is like, the earth is flat, and we're like, you're dumb, and then we start doing that, they just go to the internet and they find a community that reinforces that idea and allows them to continue to be dumb.
Yep.
Not dumb, but ignorant.
Because the world is... No, because the world is not flat, but conspiracy theories have definitely found a new home on the internet, and algorithms like to promote those things. So, like 9/11 being an inside job, too many people would have to know. Like, you can't keep a secret with that many people knowing. It's just humanity. Like,
there was a big study about how long a secret lasts is based on how many people know it. And the more people that know, the less time that secret's gonna stick around. So,
but no secret is you are also doing a lot of work on the SAE YouTube channel, including some how-to stuff. So that's just do a search for SAE International on YouTube, and they can find.
You just head on over to YouTube, like and subscribe, I guess, is the thing I should be saying at the end of the videos, but I don't.
Subscribe, ring that bell. Actually, when we talk briefly for our members only stuff here in a second, I'll tell you about subscribing and bells and how that doesn't matter so much in 2024. But
I think it's not my videos. I mean, the videos I'm doing are, it's early days. I'm just trying to do education. I am not beholden to traffic, which is a weird thing for me because my entire life has been.
Must be nice.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But I am not beholden to that. I'm beholden to the people who are watching, and I'm beholden to the truth and being trustworthy and trying to uphold the what SAE is all about. And so, I would love our videos to have millions of views, But if they don't, like, we understand the value of still having them out there. And so that's where I'm at now. That said, go and subscribe and watch all my videos 60, 70, 80 times.
If you want more information about this show, including show notes with links to Robbie's YouTube channel at SAE and some of the stuff that we talked about, you can visit our website at resistance.evpulse.com, which is our dedicated podcast page. If you're watching this on YouTube, the description box will have all of the show notes and stuff like that. If you want to support the show and help continue it going, right now the best thing you can do is help people subscribe. Get people to subscribe. We're in every major podcatcher, whatever. We're also on YouTube. And if you really, really want to support us, then give us your money. You can do that by becoming a member at our Patreon page at patreon.com/evpulse, or becoming a channel member on the YouTube EV Pulse page. The levels have parity in both places, so regardless of where you give us your money, you'll get the same access to the same perks. Some of those include early access to episodes, and also a bootleg feed, which will include all of our pre and post show banter. And until next time, I am your voice of the Resistance, which reminds me of Babylon 5, Chad Kirshner, and thanks for watching.